I've been playing video games for a very long time, ever since I was just a young little boy in fact. And back in the day, nothing warmed my heart more than opening up a brand new game on my birthday. Only to realize the next day that I was now 364 days away from getting my next video game. So I needed to make sure that these games lasted. The way that I was able to make sure those games never got boring was being absolute dog water at them. A game like Super Mario 64, which would take the average person a few hours to beat, literally took me 3 years to finally complete. One thing I love about this generation of gaming is that you don't need to be bad at gaming anymore to artificially inflate their lifespan. Because thanks to the internet and the ability to make updates, a game can now never really feel old, especially when it comes to competitive titles, since the meta is always shifting. This means that in 1 month, you might see an agent in pretty much every single game you play, and then the next month, you might not see them at all. And there's one agent that was considered unplayable when she came out, but after some tweaking has been able to find herself a nice spot in the meta. This is Viper in a nutshell. When Viper was first released, she was not only unplayable, she was a joke. She didn't fit the game at all. The fact that she couldn't pick up her wall or orb meant that if she put it down, you pretty much had to commit to a site or push the other site with no smokes. Not to mention her ult also damaged your teammates, which is actually legal. Trust me, I looked it up. But after only changing pretty much everything about her kit, I'm happy to say that Viper is now not only playable, but is now oppressive. Viper's signature ability is her toxic screen, binded to E by default. This ability is Viper's wall that she can put down, and once down she can turn it on and off to block line of sight as well as deal damage to enemies that touch it. It's very ironic that the ability that made people think Viper was so bad is now one of the most deadly abilities in the game. Pushing through this thing can be one of the scariest things you can do, not just in this game, but in life in general. I've been both skydiving and bungee jumping, and I'll tell you right now that it was far less scary jumping out of a literal plane than it is every time I have to push a site with the Viper wall up. 30 damage doesn't sound like a lot, but when you consider that it puts you into single headshot range from a phantom bullet, it gets a lot scarier. Not to mention that if there's a Viper molly on the other side of it, you can't really see it, and one accidental step and the double damage will be the end of you. Normally when pushing through this wall with your team, the first person is going to die 100% of the time, and the person in second who's supposed to trade him is a coin flip. And on attack, not being able to pick up a wall is honestly not that big of a downside anymore, because you can still use it for mind games. You can use it to fake a site pretty easily, or to even lurk on some noobs and get free kills in the back, which is how I get my trademark 8 kills a game. But not only that, pro teams also don't really run a Viper as the only controller anymore. If you've been watching challengers, you would know that double controller is kind of the meta right now. So even if you commit your wall early to a site, you'll still have an Astra there to smoke for your team when it's time to execute. So TLDR, Viper's wall is strong on attack for site executes, and it's strong on defense for site executes. Viper's next ability is her Poison Cloud, binded to Q by default. This ability costs 200 credits, and Viper can hold 1 charge per round. This is Viper's orb, which is basically just a smoke. The downside of this ability is that unlike other smokes in the game, she has to throw it by hand, which can make it a little harder to get it to go exactly where you want it sometimes, compared to an agent like Astra or Omen. The upside of this ability is literally everything else. It's the biggest smoke in the game, unless it's not, and I'm wrong, which is totally possible, not gonna lie. You can also reuse the smoke pretty much infinitely, since it doesn't have a dedicated timer, but instead runs off of Viper's resource meter. You can also control when the orb goes up and when it goes down for more freedom on how to use it. But wait, there's more. You can also pick up the orb mid-round to throw it somewhere else if you need to.
But wait! There's more!
The orb also damages enemies that try to run through it, just like the wall. How's my sales pitch, by the way? Did I convince you to get the Sham Cloud, or no? You're a duelist main? Okay, my bad. I'll continue. This orb is very powerful, as I've already said, and you can also use it to create one-way smokes on certain maps to make it even harder to push through. And there's also one of my favorite ways to use it, which is to place it down on a default plant spot to force enemies to move, stalling a plant, forcing them to plant somewhere that isn't optimal, or just straight up getting a kill. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a kill on B side of Icebox just by placing down my orb on the default plant, and then walking in it and just killing the planter for free. At least twice. Viper's final ability is her snake bites, binded to C by default. Each snake bite costs 200 credits per charge, and Viper can hold up to 2 charges per round. This is Viper's molly. I know with KO and his molly, I talked about how vanilla it was, but Viper's is quite the opposite. The molly itself doesn't deal a lot of damage per second, but trades that extra damage for the ability to make enemies vulnerable. Enemies that are vulnerable take double damage from all sources and is one of the scariest things you could be afflicted with in the game. You have not felt real pain until you've been killed by a Viper that dealt 400 damage to you. This ability is one of the biggest reasons why Viper is so good at holding down sights. You can't push her without your whole team being just one shot away from the next round at all times. And the downside of the damage of the molly being low isn't even that big of a deal, because in a post-plant situation, if she has her orb on the bomb, you can't stick half because the damage of the molly combined with the orb damage is just way too much. Plus, with 2 mollies, if you're in a 1-on-1 or heck, even a 2-on-1, if you're against a Viper with lineups, you kinda just lost. Because she can effectively stall for like 13 seconds, and even if you get on the bomb for a second, you become a one-shot kill to the Viper if she happens to peek you. Viper's ultimate is her Viper's Pit, which is very humble of her to put her name in it. The ult costs 7 ultimate points to use and creates a giant cloud of toxic smoke that damages all enemies who enter it. While Viper's in the ultimate, it'll be up forever and only disappears when the Viper chooses to put it down or if she leaves the ult for 15 seconds. This is honestly a round-winning ult. There are very few ultimates in the game that can consistently get you a 1v3 clutch. But honestly, if you're in a 1v3 situation with the bomb down in a Viper ultimate, I almost expect the Viper to win. You can play around in this thing and be very hard to find, ducking in and out of it. And with 2 mollies, players can't really tap the bomb without finding you first, since they're probably going to be at 1 HP and a molly will instantly kill you after you tap. The only consistent ways you can actually beat a Viper in her ultimate is with something like a Sova drone, Skye's ultimate, or even Yoru's ult. But nobody really plays him, so that doesn't really count. Viper is a great example for how any agent can become viable with a few balancing tweaks. She was once unplayable, but after receiving a handful of key buffs and quality of life changes, has been able to take the meta by storm. Her ability to hold down a site is comparable to that of a Sentinel, and her post plan is also one of the best in the entire game. And if you ever decide to hop in the pit with her, you better be careful or else you might get bit by the Viper. Hey everyone, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Quick announcement, I'm officially moving my streaming start time forward a couple hours to 10 AM EST. That time just seems to work better for a lot of people. Also, as some of you may have noticed, I'm no longer streaming on YouTube. I'm gonna be sticking to streaming on just Twitch for now, so if you don't want to miss when I go live, please consider following me on there. I might end up streaming on YouTube eventually, but for right now I'm just gonna stick with Twitch. Also, if you have any suggestions for agents you want to see me talk about in the series, please leave a comment letting me know. Also, follow me on Twitter if you'd like. I post updates on there pretty often and I'll be posting whenever I go live. And if you want to join my Discord community, there will also be a link in the description for that as well. And finally, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Valorant related content.